Boom. All right. Right now I'm working on a book. It's called Diana the Psychopomp. And what a psychopomp is in Greek mythology, they're the ones that guided the recently dead to the other side, like a guardian spirit. Except in my book, it's kind of, there's so many people in the universe, there's not enough spirits for that, so they start giving it out to people like jury duty. You're sitting around the afterlife doing whatever, then you get a summons, like you would for a jury duty, but I gotta go do psychopomp duty. Man, I don't have time for that. So Diana the Psychopomp, she gets selected to go pick up a guy, and basically he's hellbound. But he's not a bad person. He made a deal for his sick wife, and then pretty much the book is them running from the forces of both heaven and hell, trying to keep him from being taken, because she's like, you're a good person, I'm not letting you go down. And so both sides are after him, so they're running through the afterlife trying to escape. And right now I just picked a random chapter. I did chapter 2. I didn't really know what to do. I was like, do I want to do the prologue? Do I want to do chapter 1? No, I'll do chapter 2. It's kind of like a pretty good one to read. Okay. Deep in the middle of downtown Heaven City, the Spirit and Soul Retrieval Center, or the SSRC for short, was busy as usual. A literal haven for those of the bureaucratic persuasion, this was the control hub to process the souls of all the departed and send them off to their eternal hereafter. At one time, it was a vast garden with never-ending trees and streams, a glorious sight to behold for those lucky enough to get to witness it. In the last few centuries, it changed gradually. For a while, it appeared to be a train station with guides standing around ready to guide the departed. Since the Earth calendar year of 1939, it took on the appearance of a large, seemingly average two-story building in downtown Heaven. To the average person, it would appear to be a faceless office building. A muted off-white color, a single row of windows on the second floor, and none on the first, save for the large front windows on either side of the revolving door at the top of the steps. There were only a few people who actually worked there. The head of the SSRC and a small pool of bookkeepers and some security guards, who were in actuality angelic soldiers who worked directly for the Archangel Michael. Currently, it had a very different leader who first took over in 1967 upon his own death, allowing the former head of the SSRC to retire and free to explore the eternal vastness of the spirit realm. Lawrence Maxwell, once head of KDOT, or the Kansas Department of Transportation, had passed on after a massive heart attack while playing golf. His own psychopomp was the former head of this department, a man by the name of Rowlett, who himself ran the department since Abraham was told to sacrifice his son. Lawrence was offered the job, and since then, he had used all of his paper-pushing abilities to turn the SSRC into what it is today, a model of bureaucratic efficiency. Going by the name of Max now, he ran the SSRC and helped organize the selection process of the psychopomps. It was his idea to implement the limit to a decade. A spirit can only be picked for psychopomp duty once every 10 years, and only a few things could disqualify you. If you were a resident of hell, you were not going to be selected, though they could always meet the psychopomp and take that soul into custody, and that's only if the HPS didn't pick them up first. Oftentimes they'd meet the psychopomp in their charge outside the gates of hell so that torment could start immediately. Sort of like when a drill sergeant meets his troops right off the bus. Lucifer hated it when his people were bothered about being spirit guides, so that alone was enough to make Max take the citizens of hell off the list. If you died before 1967 when the rules first came into effect, you were grandfathered out too. But you were more than welcome to be put on the volunteer list or a request to go guide certain people, such as a loved one. Many times a child who died too young would be there to guide their mother or father to their final destination, which was a very bittersweet sight to see. The most important disqualification of all was that if you acted in such a way to show unprofessional attitude towards the duty or otherwise bring disrespect upon the SSRC. Max never understood why somebody would do that. He suspected that some spirits intentionally got removed. He'd hate to think that someone would be so selfish, but that was how people were. Just because you earned a home in heaven didn't mean you were traditionally righteous. The head of the SSRC remembered the time Gandhi was asked to guide a spirit of a little boy who was hit by a car. Gandhi tore up the summons and told the SSRC to kiss his butt. Max rather enjoyed the gig, and every now and then he would go out on a psychopomp duty just to lead by example. But other than that, he worked a 10-hour day, 6 days a week, and let a skeleton crew handle things on Sunday so we could pay homage to God in heaven. People had no reason to be annoyed at being assigned to psychopomp duty. It was completely random. Out of all the people in the spirit realm, other than hell, of course, every time someone died, the first people picked were those on the volunteer list. Other than that, it was a random summons sent via spirit mail to the spirit's home residence, wherever it may be. Nirvana, Valhalla, heaven, or the outlands of existence, it was a random summons. The mailbox, a wonderful thing that has been in effect throughout the existence of the spirit world and its first inhabitants so far back that no one could comprehend it. This universe was not the first, nor to be the last. All the mortals that existed before and those who are yet to exist all reside here. The spirit realm is infinite, but if one learned to traverse it properly, one could get anywhere in a matter of seconds. You just needed to know how to look. As Max continued his paperwork, a special message popped up on his screen. He only got these in special occasions. Ronald Anderson, age 50, bound for... Oh, Max muttered. Taking a sip of his coffee, he pondered how to proceed. This wasn't going to be something given to a random psychopomp, and there wasn't anybody on the volunteer list at the moment, unfortunately. After all, the universe and all the parallel realities caused an almost constant flow of dead people that needed to be guided. The computer brought up a list of available, suitable psychopomps for the situation. It was rare that the computer would make suggestions, but the algorithm was pretty good, and who was Max to question it? Ben Franklin. No, can't be him. He just came off psychopomp duty. Going down the list of names, he came across one that stood out. Greta von Hendro, a lovely young lady who was engaged to a man named Charlie who ran the grocery store in Valley Center. Right after he made a deal with the devil upon learning the head of that grocery store was working a deal to control all the grocery stores in time and space. Unfortunately for Greta, she was also killed before her wedding and devoured by little monsters called Do-Monkey Doll-Hands. That's strange. Miss Von Hendra was actually on psychopomp duty already. Why is she on the list? Oh, the algorithm must need updated. Right below Greta Von Hendra was another name that was perfect for the job. And not only was she selected by the algorithm, which apparently needed to be upgraded, she hadn't been on psychopomp duty since 2010. Well, it's about time Miss Myers gets off her butt. With the grin of a jerk about to completely ruin somebody's day, Max punched in his password so that Diana Myers would receive her summons in her mailbox for psychopomp duty. It's going to be a little bit more clean when I get done with it. And the thing about all my books, they're all interconnected. I call it the Yoakum-verse. You're going to find characters here, meeting characters here, referencing situations, and you know it's all the same universe, but they have like different feels. Like this one is, think Jedi meet Highlander meets Blade. It's got sci-fi and fantasy with a little bit of paranormal. It's got time travel. This guy, he fights vampires in space. He travels through the 3 galaxies. He finds out his family's from another planet. These 4 here, this is the folklore series. They're all anthology series of dark folklore. Each one references the others, but you can read them in any order. These you have to read in that order, but these you can really read in whatever order you want. Although it's kind of like a Marvel movie, you do want to read them in the order they were written. But red caps, they're little monsters in folklore. They murder travelers, kind of like, they look like dwarves, but they have red hats. And they soak the hat in the blood of their victims to stay alive. This is Baba Yaga. She's an infamous Russian witch. I give her a pretty unique origin story. Incubus, I call it that, but it's also more like the shadow people that if you ever suffer from sleep paralysis, which I do on occasion, you see those shadowy things in your bedroom. That's what he is. And I actually put my real life experiences for sleep paralysis in here. And Krampus, of course, is the infamous Christmas monster. And his origin actually ties in pretty closely with this series of books. I've had people say that, that wasn't what I was expecting. Well, if you want every other Krampus book, go, I didn't want to write every other Krampus book. I wanted to give him a unique story. Because basically, he looks just like Santa, but he's really thin, sickly looking, but he's still strong. He just looks good. And then he looks kind of like a zombie Santa, but really thin, tattered clothes. And he's got hooves for feet. And he has the long horns on his head, just like Krampus does in all the folklore stories. And I never caught this before on the artwork. But the person who did this book cover for me put a candy cane in his hair. This book's been out for a few years now. Somebody noticed that the other week. I'm like, I never caught that. These here are 2 short story collections. These are multi-author. I got one story in each book, and there's other stories in here too by other authors. This one I did is about black-eyed children, which I don't know if you know that urban myth. People will get like a knock on their door, and there's a couple of kids out there, and their eyes are all black, and they want to come in. I need to call my parents. Can I use your phone? You get a feeling of dread, so you start to let them know. Wait a minute. No, I can't let you in. It's like an urban legend that's been going on for a few years now. And it's like, I've always like, well, what happens if you let them in? Nobody knows. Yeah. So I came up with an idea. And this one here, my story is about a guy from an alternate reality. He goes through a wormhole into our world, and that splits him off into a twin. His twin version's going around killing people. But he can see it going on in his mind, so that helps him track him down. He's like, I got to find this guy before he keeps murdering people. And the guy that helps him actually is Merlin the magician, like from King Arthur legend. I got him as a character in all 4 of these. He's the guy that shows up like to help the protagonist out, like, okay, what you got here is a red cap. I can help you get rid of it. And I do have more, but I just don't have copies of them right now. I've been piece selling them off over the last few years. Like I said, I got a bunch of these for book signings in 2020, but those never happened. So I've been trying to get these, on Facebook, Instagram, like hey, set of books, discount. Amazon sells these for like $15 a piece, but I do it for cheaper than that. I mean, Amazon sets the prices now. When I publish the book, I set it like, okay, $10. In Amazon, they might bump it up on their own. They don't check with you on that. It's pretty much, they're going to do what they want. And I self-published these. These 2 were done by somebody else, so even if they were to change the price, they'd be the ones to do it, not me. So I just tried to get as many copies of these as I could once they got published. Now this one here, I kind of like the artwork on it. I'm not quite sure if my story qualifies for transcending, but I figure a guy popping out of his reality into ours, that's kind of transcendent. And I kind of got the idea too from The Man from Torrid, which is an old legend from the 1950s. This guy was going to Japan. His passport had the country of Torrid. It doesn't exist. He's showing him on a map. It's supposed to be right here. Well, it's not on the map. So they detained him in a hotel on the 2nd floor, and the next day the police show up to question him again. He's gone. Everything's locked from the inside. People think, oh, he went back to his reality. And then other people think it's a hoax. It was 1958, I think, that when it supposedly happened. I mean, who knows? I mean, the guy might have just crawled out the window. But he had a passport, actually had stamps on it from different countries like Italy, Germany, all that stuff. But he had an accent they couldn't quite place. But he looked like anybody else in a suit with a beard and stuff, but they didn't quite know what to make of him. But I kind of took that idea and I referenced it in that short story here because the main character, I remember when my great uncle told me about that time he went to another world, we thought he was crazy. So I kind of incorporated that into my story too. Now, if you want, you can have a bookmark.
So these are all the ones that you've done thus far?
Well, yeah, there's more. I just don't have copies of them.
Don't have copies
Yeah,
of them.
well, I got one about a haunted cruise ship.
Okay.
I got a short story collection that they're all my stories. I didn't put it out, but I got a small poetry book too.
Okay.
And the Daemon Cloak of Hanael. It's about the shape-shifting cloak. The guy puts it on and it sprouts out wings and he can fly around.
There's this one right here.
Right. And yeah, you can see the cover in color right there.
Yeah.
That's from a book signing from several years ago with me and several other authors. I put one random book cover from each of us on there. At the time, I had just published that one, so that's why I picked it. I had some business cards, but I left them in my backpack at home. But it's basically, if you want, instead of a business, since I don't have the business cards, let me make sure I got my website on here.
I don't see it on here, but I'm sure if you put, oh yeah.
Yeah, it's right up there.
Yeah, right.
If you want to take one of those, you can too. I'm kind of behind on getting all my bling for this stuff. I used to have some, different bookmarks. This one here, I was working on all four of us autographing it, but we never got the chance.
Oh, okay. That's yours.
'Cause I thought that would have been cool to have all four of our signatures on there.
Does she say y'all be back to him? Or she's gonna try to do
Well, I know they're gonna try to do another event, which I'm really hoping to get back to doing more events. And especially if we're gonna be having more than one author here, that'd be really cool. That'd draw an even bigger crowd.
yeah.
And I know several authors, like the ones that are here. I've gone and done book signings with them. And I know several others too, so I'm gonna reach out to all of them. Maybe we can all get in on this.
Yeah. Okay, so you can purchase it from links to purchase as well as the YouTube channel too.
Yeah, on my website, if you go to the bookshelf, there's 4 links. There's Amazon paperback, Amazon Kindle, then Barnes & Noble, and then Kobo.
Okay.
Which I don't really know if people will be doing Kobo too much. I think Walmart actually sells Kobo ebooks.
I've never heard of Kobo.
It's something I didn't hear about either until I started doing my ebooks. Oh, speaking of which, these 4 books here
Or ebooks.
on all my stuff is available for ebook, but right now for the month of July, all 4 of these are 99 cents each on the digital download.
Oh, really?
I was going to do it for just the 4th of July weekend, and I thought, I'll just do it for the whole month. Because somebody might not be able to do it that particular payday. I know it's only 99 cents each, so that's,
$4.
but still, I've been broke enough to where I'm like, I can't afford $4.
Yeah.
Everybody's been that broke.
Yeah.
So like, okay, do I buy a book or do I put $4 worth of gas in my car and try to stretch it out for the next 3 days?
Well, thank you. It was interesting.
I'm glad somebody showed.
Well, I said I was gonna come here and then we were gonna go across the street and kind of just get out the house.
It's too nice of a day to be stuck in the house.
It's just
Yeah.
so hot, so I said, okay, we could come and cool off and listen to the author. And then she got more books. So
Well,
thank you, Miss
that's
Larry.
what you do in the library.
Yeah, she loves to read. I'm glad she enjoys reading too.
Because I'm still not watching, listening to the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yes, we are. Yes, you are.
I think I read that book years ago. It was good.
You read it?
It was.
Yeah.
I was really young then. I don't
Yeah.
remember much about
Yeah.
it.
I like it.
It's a good story. I went through like 7 or 8 books.
There's this whole series, that big old thick.
Yep.
Yeah, that and I read a lot of H.G. Wells.
G. Wells.
I love War of the Worlds, but the book is really boring.
Yeah.
A lot of people
I
walking.
read the book. I saw the movie, but I don't know if I read the book of War of the World.
I love The Time Machine. That was a good
The
book
Time
too.
Machine, yeah, or G. Wells.
When I was in the 8th grade, I wish I would have kept this. Our teacher had us write a sequel. I wish I would have kept it.
Oh. Oh.
It was a bad thing, though. I had him end up materializing in a rock, and it killed him.
Oh.
And my teacher reads it. She's like, "Really? That's why you want to end the
I
story?"
know.
I'm like, why not?
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I enjoyed listening to some of the, what the books are about. And so I was like, I don't even know what it's about.
Yeah, this here, I've gotten up to halfway through being done with the rough draft.
Uh-huh.
My target date is September,
Okay.
because I want to get it to where I can order copies in time. Because I'm hoping to set some October book signings. I like Halloween season.
Yeah.
It's all this stuff,
Okay. Like, yeah.
You got monsters, witches, shadow people, Krampus. That's good for Halloween reading.
Yeah.
Or you can even read this on Christmas. It's kind of a Christmas story.
Okay.
I mean, it's not really a Christmas story you want to read to, the grandkids or
Yeah.
anything, but. And this one is if you like Star Wars, like the Jedi and the Highlander movie, because these guys are kind of immortal, but not like real immortal. They do die eventually. It's just harder to kill
I want to
them.
take a picture of this. Our son, he may be more interested in reading these than you say they're on the ebooks. I could maybe order the ebooks for him.
Sure.
Okay,
You would like those.
you think he would like
Yeah.
those?
He loves drawing.
Yeah, the guy that did the book covers, those first two, I worked with him, and he finally quit the job to go be a tattoo artist. He got to the point where he could do enough. He gets like 200 text messages a day for appointments.
Oh wow, for tattoo.
Yep, and he did mine too. He did my first one for free for practice.
Oh.
And the second one I paid for, but it's like, well, it's more intricate detail. I don't expect you to do that for free.
Yeah.
But this one right here, he did this one for free just for practice.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then this one here,
Okay.
that's the one
That's
that.
the one right here, huh? It's similar or turned upside.
Yeah, that's
It's similar.
the symbol for our Veterans Brotherhood that I started. And it's kind of the fictionalized version in here. I mean, we don't drive around on motorcycles, fighting monsters and aliens and stuff. But that's what I'd like to be doing with my time. Instead of driving a forklift for 12 hours a day, I'd rather, fight aliens
Yeah.
and the Illuminati.
Oh, the Illuminati. Yeah.
Yeah, they team up with the Crimson Death trying to take over the Earth.
Okay.
This starts out in 1998. He gets taken back in time 500 years, finds out his family's from another world. He becomes a Bactane, which Archangel Michael imbues him with his essence. You live 1,000 years. You don't age. That way he can make it to his original timeline. This is the first one that I wrote that takes place in the future. But there's one thing about this. I finished that right after COVID started. So I made a little note in there in the prologue about, because it starts out in like 2080. So yeah, there's a little thing in 2020 called COVID, but it disappeared after a few months. See, in my universe, it's gone.
It's gone.
And in there, just as a joke, I called it Convid.
Oh.
Because it's a con. But somebody said, you typoed that. Like, no, you don't get the joke. Well, I guess you'd have to know my twisted sense of humor to understand it.
And then this one is
Oh, that one is a short story collection.
okay.
All the allies and enemies that he meets in all three of these books, I give the story on what they were doing that led them to the point where they met him.
Oh, okay.
Well, like there's a point in he finds a parallel universe where he finds an evil version of himself. It's a parallel reality where the Bactane are evil instead of good. This explains how that happens.
Okay.
And then the Sword of Targoth, which is like the ancestral weapon of the leaders of the planet. He can summon it from across the galaxy. He doesn't carry it with him. He's like, when a monster comes up to fight, it materializes in his hand, he fights, and he can send it back. There's an ancient technology that logs onto his DNA only. If anybody else were to pick it up, if you're not of the bloodline of Sargon,